What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Ladies Who Bronche. I am Julissa.
What's good, everybody? This is Skittles. And today we are sitting with Miss Jenny Lo, YouTube extraordinaire. You've seen her on BuzzFeed. You've seen her on We Are Me Too. You've seen her as Abuela, Laritza, Marucci, Tia Gloria.
La
who was
familia,
like the entire familia.
I sound crazy.
The Cuban queen herself, Miss Jenny Lorenzo. Tell us, who the fuck are you?
I have multiple personalities living inside of my body, apparently. But yes, I am a Cuban-American content creator and actor, born and raised in Miami. And I've been in LA for 4 years now, and I've been in that hustle and just really focusing on raising Latino voices and doing sketch comedy.
Yes,
Amazing.
yes.
So at what moment in Miami did you decide, okay, I'm coming to LA?
It was actually a rough time in Miami. I mean, as a kid, I always dreamed of being on a Nickelodeon show, on all that. I was a character actor since I was a kid, and it's not something that I thought about or knew this is a thing. I just knew I liked playing different characters, but it was just like a long, it's like a distant dream, like, oh, that's never gonna happen, because we couldn't afford that. I had kids in my classes that were heavily involved in the arts, and their parents took them out of school and they went to LA and they got like a model, and I always wanted to be that kid, and I just couldn't. And so, I went to theater school, I went to film school, and even still, when I was in film school, I wasn't thinking about LA because there was a brief period of time where I believed Miami could be the next big deal. Around that time, like, Burn Notice was being filmed there, and there were talks that things were going to change. And I was part of a really successful professional theater company, and I guess I felt safe in that theater company, like big things were going to happen. And all of a sudden, things took a sharp turn with the company, and I was back at ground zero, and I was, post-graduation, I was working multiple odd jobs. I was in debt. I was struggling a lot. I had a car that kept breaking down. Imagine Miami. I mean, y'all are in New York, like humid weather. And I was driving to auditions, and my car had no AC. I would get rained on.
Oh my God.
It was like, and I'm like, I'm not trying to play violins tampoco, because I was still very blessed, and, someone always has it worse than you and the whole thing. But it was a tough time for me.
Yeah.
And that's when I realized, you know what? I have to move, because everything that I want for my career is not here. It's just not.
Yeah, it's a tough decision to make. And so you came to LA, and like, what was one of the first things that really excited you when you came out here and the ball started rolling?
Just LA. I had already been... So I'm a huge nerd, and my friends and I love cosplay, and we started going to San Diego Comic-Con as a tradition since 2011. And sometimes what we would do, we'd go to San Diego, do the thing, and then visit LA. And I loved the weather. I loved the people. Everyone was really kind. And it wasn't at all what I was told for years about LA. I think people like to hate on LA a lot, like, oh, everyone's so plastic and fake. And I'm like, of course that exists everywhere, especially in major cities. Yeah. And like possibly Beverly Hills. But everywhere else, people are pretty chill. Like, I go to the supermarket here with like no makeup on. You can have like a head full of like multicolored hair, and like no one judges you. People are just more artistic here, and I think that's a lot of what I felt in New York as well. And not saying that Miami doesn't have its art scene, but there's definitely a lot more judgment that goes on there. So when I've gone out in cosplay, I'll hear comments from people like, it's not Halloween. You know what I mean? It's just more of like I don't know how to explain it. They're not as open to like people expressing their individuality unless you're like in the arts district or like South Beach.
Yeah.
But where I'm from, you kind of get weird looks.
Yeah, I think for sure, like, even for us being artists in New York, like, New York is super diverse, and like, you see the wildest shit. Like,
Yeah.
just ride the train and you get, like, some interesting characters. But even, like, in the South Bronx, in the communities that we represent, we actually have a lot of that, too. So, like, going, like, especially when we were in high school and we would want to, like, if there was Pride Parade or even on Halloween, like, the idea of riding the train all the way from the South Bronx into the city with that costume on was, like, not a good idea.
And it wasn't encouraged. I remember, like, even in high school, they would be like, because we went to a performing arts high school in Manhattan, so the culture was completely different.
Oh, I can imagine,
than growing up in the Bronx. But it was always like encouraged, like, do not wear your costumes on the train. Change when you get to school because of the ignorance that you experience.
Yeah, and there's definitely an art scene as well that's bubbling up in the Bronx. The South Bronx area, there's like a lot of gentrification that's been coming in the wave, but there's been a lot of entrepreneurs of color who are like trying to really, you know, take hold and say, okay, but we're business owners, we have visions too. Let us take over this space before you bring someone else to take it in. And so there has been some light evolution of that, but definitely coming to LA, you know, New Yorkers, we're very loud and proud about our culture. So we all come in like, this is how they do in LA. In New York, it's not like that. The nightclubs are open later.
I know. East Coast and West Coast, the constant battle. It's very interesting, but
yeah. So.
But anyway, so let's talk about brunch because that's what we all want to know. What is your favorite brunch plate? And this can be pre-vegan, you know, que sé yo, or it could be post-vegan. Whatever. You could give us either or.
Okay, cool.
What's your favorite?
You know what's interesting is that Miami people, maybe now, but I didn't know what the hell brunch was about. Brunch to me was like when abuela makes you breakfast late.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, I guess this is a breakfast and a lunch. I wasn't involved in brunch culture at all in Miami until I moved to LA, and that's like the thing. Yeah. But then I almost like avoid it because that's when restaurants are most packed. Yeah. I have had to wait over an hour and a half to 2 hours just to have brunch out here, and I'm like, oh no, I don't have time for this.
We don't do that.
But and tampoco I don't drink, so the whole mimosa thing out the window. I like me some strawberry lemonade. But yeah, so like pre-veganism, you know, I love your typical like American breakfast. Like I love scrambled eggs with, you know, sausage links and tú sabes, what else? Like I love toast. Yeah. And then you're thinking, well, that's like American breakfast, but then I also love the Cuban breakfast, which is like tostada. Yeah. And like a café con leche, which is like, Cubans have kind of like the most basic breakfast. Yeah. Like I've had to do videos in the past where it's like breakfast for all different, you know, from all different Latin American countries, and like everyone had this like exquisite cuisine, and then I had like tostada and coffee, and they're like, that's just toast. I'm like, well, you're not even getting any nutrients in. And then pastelitos though. I love. That's what I miss. That's what I hate about. Not that I hate. Nothing wrong with being vegan.
You're in transition. It's okay.
And we can talk about this later. But since I have Crohn's disease, being vegan has helped me immensely with my pain and like managing the condition. But I think, I miss waking up early and going to like a Cuban bakery in Miami and getting like pastelito de carne and queso and stuff like that.
Yes, so good.
So she kind of answered what her favorite brunch and what her drink is. She said strawberry lemonade. Awesome. Which I'm always down for a good strawberry lemonade.
Those are dope.
Always so good. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about what it was like when you used to go out to eat as a kid.
A lot of it was wearing stuff I didn't want to wear. Yes. Just like itchy clothing, a lot of man, what I love to say this freaking word, encaje. Yeah. Like a lot of ruffles and like cosa and pantyhose. Mm-hmm. And my grandma, like I still don't know what the word is in Spanish because my grandma would always say pantyhose. Pantyhose. Mm-hmm. And then like the little black buckle shoes that were shiny.
Mary Jane's.
And it was, oh my God. Or if it was those little ruffly medias. So it's like, okay, it's like, and then the azabache. The ruffle sock. And then, did y'all ever have to wear like azabaches?
Oh, okay. So I had one when I was really younger because my mom, one day, a man came up to the carriage and like touched my head and was like, "She's beautiful. You should put her on TV." And I caught a fever and I would not stop crying. They took me to the ER. Like the doctor was like, "I don't know why she has this fever." It was this whole thing. And then somebody was like, "Ponle una porque it was that." And then they had to whatever. But my hair texture was never the same again after that day. My mom said my hair, like, because I was like sweating and hot, and she was like, the texture and just your softness was like,
okay, so someone did more than just el ojo. I was like some brujeria shit.
You know
what?
I'm okay.
Well, your hair looks great. I'm like, that happened with my baptism.
Wow.
My grandma swears, and my mom, that like someone did mal de ojo on me on my baptism. I just think it was gas, but apparently I couldn't stop crying.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh no, you were perfectly fine. And the same shit. Like someone went up to me I don't know who it was, friend of the family or family member, like,
right.
Ay, qué linda la niña. And then, I was like losing it in church. The priest was like, oh God, dunk her head in the water, whatever. And they always said the same thing. If someone did mal de ojo on you, like,
yeah.
I'm like, okay, but maybe I just needed to fart. Like, so, but it's, but I'm not, what's weird is like, that's made me so paranoid because it's like I'm not totally a non-believer of that stuff,
right?
Because it's so ingrained in me, about el ojo, that sometimes I'm like, should I put my salsa vache back on? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then maybe it's like an energy thing.
Yes. Yep.
The world is weird, so I'm very open-minded to a lot of things.
Yeah,
I'm like, sure, we have aliens living underneath the ground. Sure, that I'll believe anything, honestly, because there's a lot about this universe we don't know or understand. So
exactly, the way stuff is going, you honestly can never tell. I do think, like, being Dominican and Afro-Latina, like that, just like any Afro-Latinx culture has a lot of that so deeply rooted in it. And I'm like, I don't know, man, like something about it's true. Maybe they call things wrong.
I'm like, where'd they come up with this?
Right.
It's from like, something.
Right. Because like I know J.K. Rowling wrote Harry Potter, so a lot of things are possible in terms of creation stories, but like it's still something that like you feel energy. Like it's something that you hear when people say be careful or like be mindful when you feel a certain way, and you know that it's real, but you've never been able to articulate it. So there is a lot of times that I'm like, the way that Bruja said that, I understand. She articulated that weird thing. I don't know. Is that feeling? So I'm just always careful. My mom is always like, cuídate que Dios te bendiga before I walk out the door. And I'm like, thanks, mama, for having my back, because I be forgetting to bless myself sometimes. And, and you go on about your day. So
damn.
Totally, yeah. But then in terms of like, so what was like when you used to go out to eat when you were a kid, what used to excite you the most? Like, I used to like Burger King a lot for some reason, and that used to excite the shit out of me. Was there any particular place that you were like, ooh, we're gonna eat here?
Yeah, fast food.
Fast food, yeah.
Probably why I have Crohn's. We lived walking distance from a Wendy's and a Burger King.
Ooh.
But for me, I was very selective. Burger King for breakfast. They had the best breakfast. And then McDonald's for lunch. Especially after church, after misa.
Yes.
I'm going to be real. I didn't care about misa. I was just like, okay, up and down.
Right.
Bless me, Father. Okay. And then I'd be like, McDonald's French fries, and like the Happy Meal toys. And I think in the 90s, they had some really dope toys.
They really did.
They were collectors.
In particular, when Britney Spears and NSYNC came out with it was like the Oops, I Did It Again, Bye 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 album that came in the Happy Meal. If you got the Happy Meal, it also came with a poster, and they were like dope. All over the commercials. It was like maybe 2000, I want to say. Or
I was a big Backstreet Boys fan, and Burger King came out with like a specific single just for that, and they all had action figures, and I collected the Backstreet Boys action figures.
Yeah.
And people cared a lot more back then about the mascots.
Yes.
Like the BK mascot and the McDonald's mascots and like, oh my God. So those are little gems. And that's what, for me, was the food. I mean, the experience of eating out.
Yeah. That was really a fun time. I used to have a shelf full of them. I used to keep all the McDonald's, and it was shelves full of
did you keep it? No.
My mom made me throw it away.
And you could have been rich now.
And I could have been rich, and I kept telling her, she's like, yeah, ¿dónde va poner esa porquería? And I was like, I don't know, but don't throw it away. All the Space Jams, they did a Space Jam one where you had to connect the basketball floor.
Yes.
I had the court.
Oh my God.
Girl, especially Well, remember those little Transformer toys that McDonald's came out with, like the chicken nugget box? And
oh my god!
That is something that people now spend a lot of money on to repurchase. Like I've started repurchasing my like old Polly Pocket necklaces.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. And Gigapets, all that shit. Ooh. Nostalgia. And so what's your favorite bochinche topic to talk about over a brunch meal?
Oh, man. You know, it's usually like I talk about the industry a lot.
Yeah.
You know, so it's usually just talking about I don't know if it's bochinche worthy really, but it's just like how the culture is on YouTube, the egos. I'm very anti-ego, so I'm just like, oh my god. It's very zombie apocalypse, so when someone we know in the industry has turned and they're no longer the same person because they're so egotistical, that's something that I talk about a lot. That it's like, that it just bothers me as a whole, that atmosphere. And just more so like about TV shows. Like it's like the gossip scene within a show, so it's not even real.
Yeah.
Like, can you believe this happened in Sabrina? Wow. Can't believe it. Crazy. So it's very industry heavy. It's hard not to talk about the industry. Yeah. And obviously it depends who you're with. If you're with like a best friend, you're going to be like, remember so-and-so from...
Literally talk about high school.
She had like her 5th kid.
Yeah.
And it's not really bad gossip. It's just more like... I have, of course, a lot of my friends are also artists of some kind. Yeah. And like 9 out of 10 of us like don't have kids, right? So it's weird looking through the other side of like outside of these artistic careers where, you know, we have friends that are working on their 3rd kid, 4th kid, and I'm like 32 and I'm like, damn, I just have a dog. So it's just like going over like, oh man, what's this person up to? Crazy. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, so it really depends who you're talking to.
Word, for sure. Yeah. All right. So now we're going to move into our Cheers to the Ladies Who, where we shout out people who are doing dope shit or dope shit that's happening. Okay. So Hulu, Pen 15, love that show.
Yes, it's really good.
Literally like my childhood, but like the nuances that I did not know how to talk about.
Yes,
it's so wonderful. So tell us, what do you love about the show?
My God! First of all, they're my age.
Yeah.
So I was exactly 13 in the 7th grade in the year 2000.
Wow.
So, and it's funny because my best friend growing up at the time was a white girl. And so I really see myself in these characters and in the friendship and the dynamic. I was a loser. I had the same crappy haircut. In the 7th grade, I never forget, I wanted to look cool going into 7th grade. My hairdresser butchered my hair. And it was one of these like little like, it almost looked like her haircut. It almost looked like her haircut. And I had bask in it. I'll show you a photo. I wish I had it on me right now. I wish I had that shit. I will scroll through so you can see that I am not exaggerating. So from the fashion to the braces to and what I love is that it's from a female perspective. So you see how they dealt with like being horny and feeling bad about it, and like, you know, you don't see that ever. You always see like little boys like, oh, I'm jacking off now because I like found, you know, myself as a man, and you never hear about it with women. So it's like, oh shit, like young girls go through this too, where they start figuring out their sexuality and like they're like all of a sudden super horny and what do I do? And I love, it was such like an endearing episode of when they touched upon that, you know, and just the dynamic of their friendship. I love the fact that they don't hide the fact that these women are in their 30s. Yeah. Amongst a sea of 13-year-old actors. So it's just, I think specificity is what made this show win. And I think that's what any showrunner, creator, whether it's digital or film, television, should strive for. Never be afraid to be specific. Yeah. Because you're going to win people over that way. Even if they don't fully relate. Because maybe, you know, let's say like someone in their 50s could also enjoy Pen 15 because they're going to find similarities. Right. Whereas people like me, who the show is based on the same year I was in 7th grade, And I appreciate it even more because I'm like, that was my life, and I was bullied in the exact same way they were bullied. It's not like, you know how like your typical high school show or like Mean Girls, it's like very obvious bullying, like, hey, give me your lunch money, jerk.
Yeah.
Nerd, loser, I'm gonna give you a wedgie.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that kind of bullying doesn't exist, but I went to private school. But it's not like we could necessarily afford private school. My mom and dad sacrificed every penny they had to put me through private school. And so as a result, I didn't always have the best clothes. Like, I didn't have like the brands and the, I didn't have that kind of stuff. It was, I had my blessings and everything, but we were lower middle class family.
Yeah.
And imagine going to private school, small private school, which is even worse. And all these girls do have money, so their parents had them in like ballet, tap, jazz, brand new, nemaga clothing. Like they'd go to like Europe for summer, but it was like, and the way girls bullied me in middle school was very similar to how the characters in Pen 15 got bullied. It was very passive aggressive, almost like conniving, like, oh hey, so how come your mom doesn't let you shave? Or like, oh, you got your period, which is so dumb, by the way.
Yeah.
Why did we compete as
Right.
to who got
Their
their
period.
stupid period? It's like competing against like, oh, you got a broken arm, me. Like, it's like
nobody. Yeah.
I dealt with so much jealousy.
Yeah.
And I was an ugly little twerp.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't come from money, and yet I dealt with a lot of celos, especially because I would always still be the kind of like the lead character in all the Christmas plays. So just because of that one thing,
talented.
the girls would hate and tanto, and not just with me. Like you just see like the celos all over the place.
Yeah.
All in all, the show got it right.
Yeah.
Got it right.
100%.
It's because of the creators.
Yeah. Yeah, and honestly, I think the episode that sort of like almost like caught me off guard and winded me was when they create their AIM chat names, which you haven't. This is the one I didn't want to ruin for you, Juan. But
No,
I would just say like just these steps, like when she's doing her homework and the anxiety of like knowing that there's this thing that is exciting because it touches upon so many curiosities and things that are going on, including this idea of getting this attention from this guy is like so overwhelming, and it's really reminded me of the inception of how we got to this place of people finding what they couldn't get in real life on the screen.
Yes.
Like online, and it was just like, wow. It was almost like, wow, if somebody were to have asked me, like, when did the social media frenzy start and why we're always pegados de ese teléfono, I couldn't quite tell you, but then I was like, that's it. That was that moment, because I couldn't have an AIM name. So I have older siblings and they had AIM and all that stuff. And I couldn't have one, but my sister would let me log onto her AIM. And like, if I had like one or two friends that had one, she would let me, like, I am them.
Yeah.
But like, I would like see her in chat rooms and stuff like that. And I would be fascinated at this idea that all of these people are talking at once. It didn't make sense to me almost. And then it was exciting for me when that started to translate into like video gaming, like DSs and things having like IM systems, because it was like a cool way to have that in a more PG way, but nothing quite caught my attention like being able to be on AIM. And then MySpace happened and the rest is history.
Oh,
like,
and LiveJournal. Remember LiveJournal?
Zanga. I was really big on Zanga.
Zanga.
In New York, we had Skonex.
Skonex before high school.
Which was like nobody outside of New York
Never
City
heard of that.
Yeah, because it was a social media platform
specifically for high schools in New York.
Oh my gosh.
Like, and it only lasted maybe like 2 years and then like got shut down.
Yeah.
Because Facebook and MySpace came through and stuff like that.
Yeah, I was like, man, when we first got a computer and we got AOL, it was life-changing for me because I was a huge computer nerd, and I was lucky in that in the 8th grade, 7th and 8th grade, I had a really great computer teacher, so we were learning programming, web design. I was typing over 100 words per minute, and of course, me being the loser geek, all the popular kids would scream at me during typing tests, like, shut up, bro! Because they get nervous. I was like, and I'm like, I just wish I was a tougher person back then. Now I'm like, forget it. My poor fiance has to stop me in the middle of the street sometimes from like fighting people. I've like, my Chihuahua complex has like leveled up. Yeah! You know, but like when I was a kid, I was such a pushover. And again, because it was a little Christian school, it was like you couldn't even say shut up to someone or you get sent to the office. I just wish I could have like cussed everybody out and just gone, you know, Super Saiyan on everybody. Yeah. But I was always on AOL. I remember the internet being empty.
Yeah.
I just remember looking through like Lycos. I don't know if y'all remember the search engines. It was Lycos, Hotbot, Ask Jeeves. This is before
Jeeves
Google.
was the one. Yeah.
Ask Jeeves was probably the most popular one out of all those, but I was always on all of them.
Yeah.
And I was trying to build a Backstreet Boys website before there was an actual Backstreet Boys website.
Wow.
I was like, I'm going to make a website. And I even remember like trying to find the YouTube of that time. I was like, I made a video on I don't know what the hell I made the video on. I'm like, I made this video. How do I upload it?
Wow.
And there was some like Gaga website and it wasn't working properly, but everything it was insane to me. I was really deep into that. Like the web design aspect, my AOL profile was always popping because I was all up in the HTML coding. And
I wish that like that stuff was still around, like that Facebook didn't become like this like one uniform.
Oh yeah, like that you were able to customize your page.
I was bummed about that.
Like,
yeah.
Or even with YouTube, like the other day Miles J had retweeted a picture of like when you could customize your YouTube channel and like have all these like special buttons that like led to, you know, your Facebook or, you know, whatever it was, but you could have like a colorful, bright YouTube channel that music played
I don't even remember that.
And stuff, because so quickly
it ended.
Once they ended that, like it became more and more uniform on YouTube.
Right.
And
wow.
it was just like, but there was a point where like YouTube profiles were like kind of like MySpace profiles where you could just like customize
I did not. That I don't remember.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I did like customizing shit.
Yeah, it was fun.
Like making it your own.
And picking the music. My shit was the music.
The music.
The music had to be popping. Like you had to come to
match
my
your mood.
And like, literally, it had to match my mood. If I got tight in school, fuck out of here. My song would change. So when my friends would come to the page, they'd be like, "Oh, I saw you had this song. What's
like
wrong?"
you go to like if you have a breakup, it's like Justin Timberlake, "Cry Me a River."
And shit like that.
Oh my gosh.
It was great. And top 8, I think.
Top 8.
Was
I used to go in.
Drama.
A real drama.
I used to try and go in and like get those custom like
the
Facebook
codes
things.
that give you more.
So then you could like change your friend's name and their picture.
Yeah.
Like choose the picture that you like of that and put like Makazo, aka this is this, aka.
But we were so like I feel like there's like this weird self-absorption, of course, with this whole social media thing, and like now it's taken a new turn with like social media. But like I think it was maybe slightly worse back then because we were so self-indulgent. Like I had such pesada photos of myself, like overly photoshopped, looking to the sky, and then I had like Hillary Duff's like "Saw me yesterday," and my cursor was like an angel, like and like your bio was so passive aggressive, and like I wrote some dumb shit on my on my MySpace and AOL profiles, like I'm that girl that you see, and I would, you know, you're trying to copy other people, and you're like, damn, I like how Jessica talked about herself,
right?
Okay, and it's like, and then a lot of girls, like especially in Miami, like it was the same bio on MySpace. It's like, I love to laugh and go to the beach and sometimes the movies. I'm super unique. I'm like, you just described every human being, but cool. And it was like very, and then do you remember the MySpace boards where you can post quizzes about yours?
Yeah.
So there was that kind of self-absorption también, and like where the music
you would,
quotes.
Like, answer questions.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Do you like pizza? Yes. Do you like bacon? No. Like, when's the last time you went on a date? And you're like as if people gave a shit.
A half hour doing that. Like,
pero who read it?
45 questions.
Nobody.
Who be reading these things?
But also, like, who did you actually want to read it? Because
your ex or something.
Exactly.
Yes.
Because it was literally pictures.
Or your crush.
So your crush could see it. It didn't matter. Likes didn't matter back then. It mattered who saw it.
Like you swear, like there'll be questions like favorite article of clothing. My lingerie?
Yeah, right.
I'm like, bitch, you are wearing some nasty, like, sweatpants and shirts to bed. And, like...
Right, you're not in no lingerie sleeping.
But it's the same way we just kind of like, social media now is so exaggerated. Yes. And that's something that I have to remind myself of, too. And now that's, like, another topic all on its own. Yeah,
but it's true. It's hard to gauge... Like, when you look at other people and they have these, like, glamorous lives and stuff, you're like, wow, but how do they get away with that? Like, and it's curated. It's a curated experience.
I'm trying to be real about that, too, because I'm like, I don't want to be one of it. Because recently I had someone write me a personal message on Instagram that wasn't so nice, but she wasn't trying to be a troll. She was kind of judging something. And I was so upset that I started to voice message her. I was like, this is too much to type. And then it became like almost like a therapy session, because she opened up to me and she's like, I'm so sorry. I was throwing my personal biases out on you. This is what I'm going through. I didn't know you were going, because she's like, I didn't know you had any of these issues. She goes, you look so perfect and your life looks so perfect that this and that. And I'm like, this is so damaging.
Yeah.
So, and I'm trying to utilize my Insta stories more to be like, no. No, I have acne. I have a stomach condition. I have anxiety. And tampoco, it's not good to either then now tear yourself down for the sake of making people feel better.
Right.
But that's what life is for everybody, is a balance of good and bad. And I want to make sure that I don't just promote the good, because I do know people that look like they don't even have buttholes.
Right.
Okay, they're like, ding.
Yeah.
And everything they do is ding. I'm like, all right, girl, fart or something.
Right.
Like, let me know that you're human.
Right. Okay, so now we're moving into our Tuta Loca Es, where we call motherfuckers out for doing the most. So, I've always been super interested in the world of cosplay. As an actor, I always have, like, consciousness of, like, who's being cast as what character, like what stories are we putting forth. And I feel like the two worlds have this issue with seeing roles get miscast, for lack of a better word, but miscast more just in the sense of having someone who looks different play a different role. Now, I don't mean this in the way where privilege allows for, Asian samurai characters to be played by white men. I mean it more in the sense that if I said I wanted to play Poison Ivy, or if I said I wanted to be Ariel from The Little Mermaid, that I can't do it because Ariel is white, and like there's no way that I can do that, and things like that. So I'm very curious as a cosplayer, and first of all, I would love to hear a little bit about how you got into that and some of your favorite characters, and then sort of navigating that world as a Latina woman.
Yeah, this is a great topic. I talk about it a lot. I got into cosplay back in 2008. It's around the time, I graduated high school in 2005, and I started working at this, this toy store, like as if no one knows about Toys R Us.
Oh, wow.
R.I.P. Maybe, I don't know anymore.
Right.
But, so I met some of my closest best friends, and it all started in that toy store, and they all happened to be geeks, and in high school I was repressing that a lot. I was in a really bad relationship with someone who was emotionally abusive, and he just sucked ass, and he was very judgmental, and it was just, you're in high school and you're going through so much and you're so dumb. You can make some pretty dumb decisions. And so I kind of always hid that. And again, the whole popular culture and like, oh, you can't, if you're into any of these things, you're a loser. And I think a lot has changed since then, because Endgame is probably going to, be the number one grossing film of all time, and no one cares anymore that you're into superheroes. But back then, they did. And so I found my group, and I started waving my geek flag, and I didn't even know conventions existed. I didn't know that was a thing. And I went to my very first convention, and I borrowed like a cosplay. I dressed as a character from One Piece, which is an anime.
Nice.
And slowly but surely, then my next cosplay was Coraline Jones, and then I was Juno, Ellen Page's Juno with the pregnant belly. And so I started cosplaying characters that both I like cosplaying characters that I look like, because it gives that extra like, whoa, you're that character come to life, you look so much like that character. And also characters that I love,
Right.
So that's for me have been always the two rules, but that's just for myself because of the wow factor thing.
Yeah.
Because like what you're saying is I'm all for people cosplaying whoever they want to cosplay as long as it's within respectful boundaries. I have a lot of like cosplay friends that are of color and they've kicked ass at some of these characters that are white. You know what I mean? So I'm like, I just don't see what the problem is here.
Yeah. Yeah. And there seems to be like because like I have my fanisms that I have. Like I'm huge on Harry Potter. Like,
Me
that's
too.
I
did not know
Gryffindor.
this. Ravenclaw.
Wonderful. What was yours?
What about you?
Didn't I make you take
I'm
the test?
Slytherin.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Someone's proud.
Well, because everybody knows the bad guys in Slytherin. I see. I'm the opposite. I did not read
But
the
they're
books.
not all bad.
I saw the.
Yeah, and they're not all bad. It's just like it's almost like a Magneto Professor X complex.
It
I
is
feel
like you have it in you to be evil, but you can use it for good.
Yeah.
Right. So it's kind of like me being a Scorpio.
Right.
People are like, you're like the nicest Scorpio I've ever met. I'm like, don't cross me.
Yeah.
And it's like it's crazy. It's like kind of similar.
Yeah, and I understand ways in which people get attached to characters. I know recently, so like on Broadway, I think it was that they have somebody black playing Hermione.
Yes,
and,
I saw it,
which is wonderful. And
I was like, yes.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where it's like, oh, if you ever asked me what I thought she looked like, obviously I wouldn't name myself, but when you read it, it's kind of like, okay, puffy hair, like
it's left to interpretation.
Yeah, there really is no indication. Never does she ever say light skin, white, like black person. Like she doesn't necessarily specify. And so being able to see that is fun, and opening that door of possibility is great, because when we're talking about fantasy too, there's this element of like, what do you really have to hold on to in terms of diversity? I recently got into Game of Thrones because I literally binged it in 1 month to catch up because not the proudest month of my life. March was not a very proud month in my life.
But you had to do it.
But I felt like I had to do it for just the sake of like being able to engage in the dialogue. And like one of the things I quickly realized is like all the characters of color are from the parts of the world that are like slave states, right? And then all the other people are like white, and like they all have British accents, and then like everybody has fucking British accents somehow, right? But like the idea that like, wow, so it's still like sort of upholding this like medieval idea of like in medieval times, like all the rulers were white and all these lower class, people that were enslaved were people of color. So that's realistic. But the idea that when we are playing fantasy, how do we get to play with that a little more? How do we get to sort of break that apart? Or at what point do we look at these time periods and say, well, because none of it's fucking real, we can kind of do whatever the fuck we want.
Yeah.
And I would just love to see more of that. And I feel like with more content creators that are as diverse as we are, that is possible. Have you seen some of that? Have you seen some examples of people who are like continuously sort of like breaking conventions in their cosplay or even in their work that they're doing in terms of fantasy?
Well, this is it's Disney, actually. I've noticed Disney has really made strides. And when I first noticed it was when I saw the live action Beauty and the Beast with Emma Watson. Have you guys seen it?
Yes, I loved it.
I have not.
I loved it.
So it was a lot of interracial couples.
Yeah.
And it was a time period, right? It takes place in France and da-da-da-da. It wasn't even like the main characters, even though 4 of the main characters were mixed race married couples.
Right.
But then even the town, like the villagers, it was very mixed. And I felt like, wow, finally, we're catching up to BBC.
Yeah.
Because Doctor Who was actually, even before that, I'm a huge fan of Doctor Who, and they had all kinds of people of color.
Right.
And no one was like, oh, that's weird that they're dating, or like.
Right.
So I think like the Brits have it right, and they've kind of been a little more advanced with that before America has, which is interesting. So it's obviously like that's like a big TV show, and then Disney's just massive, but they truly are making strides in the content that they're releasing now, where they're making it a point to be diverse.
Yeah.
And because again, like you said, it is made up.
Yeah.
So why the hell not? You know what I mean? Have people feel represented for once.
Yeah. And I really do think it's important, though, that these steps do come from Disney's and like bigger industry things, because I do like appreciate like the grassroots, like work that comes out and people who are sort of doing it on the ground. But leading by example is really important, and I think that sometimes people who don't feel as empowered to do it, who aren't working for these larger like companies, it's because they feel like, well, if no one else is doing it at the top and if it's not received, like I can be fighting this battle for the rest of my life, or I can just get in line and like do what the industry does because clearly that works. So
yeah, they're setting a good example.
yeah,
You know what I mean? And I think bringing it down to like what we do, I think it's so important to, and again, we don't have the resources that Disney has, you know, but for me personally, a goal of mine is when I do my sketches that involve actors outside of me playing all of them, is to diversify it.
Yeah.
I can't just be casting just white Latinos when I do cast out. Of course, a lot of my videos lately have been me playing against myself.
Right.
So it is what it is.
Yeah.
Pale-ass Cuban people in a video. But when I do, like I said, when I've done other sketches, I'm always like, I need to cast Afro-Latinos. I need to cast, even if it's like, sometimes it's not all Latinos that are required, you know? So then I just diversify in general. Because I want to make that point. 'Cause I'm just tired of people at the top not realizing that Latinos are as diverse as they are.
Right.
I have met so many closed-minded people, whether in the industry or not. They're like, well, how are you Cuban? You don't have an ass. Or how are you Cuban? You're too white. Or my friends get, how are you Cuban? You're Asian. Or you're black. And it's like, oh, God. So poor John Leguizamo's like touring the damn.
Right.
Poor guy. He deserves like some medal of honor. He's like, this is what Latinos are.
Yeah.
And then it becomes a weird place because then we're like, I think the number one audience, like we consume the most media, go to the movies.
Right.
And yet, I mean, even when I was at BuzzFeed, I struggled with that. It was like, we felt like the underdogs when we were trying to create Pero Like, because they just, it's almost like, and I constantly hear this from like Latino media, big or small, that it's like, but we need to prove ourselves first. I'm like, and why is that?
Yeah.
Because I highly doubt if it was like a white show that they need to prove themselves.
Right.
It's always, why is that? Do you think we're going to automatically be shitty?
Right.
Do you think that people just don't? And I get it. Like, we're complex. Like, that's not a lie. There's like, I could be wrong, but I think there's 33 countries in Latin America
There's
and the
a lot.
Caribbean.
Yeah, there's a lot.
And we all kind of have our different accents and traditions and dialects. And I mean, look at freaking Brazil. They don't even speak Spanish.
Right.
And so it's a thing that's externally frustrating, but also internally, because we all fight.
Yeah.
Latinos hate on each other all the time, and then there's colorism, and then there's people that don't believe that colorism exists. And I'm like, okay, you're like living under a rock.
Yeah.
So there's so much work to be done, even within ourselves.
Yeah, for sure. And I think even like with casting, so like when Netflix did Siempre Bruja, and like, it was Afro-Latino and it was really cool. But then I was like ready. I was like hype. I was like, finally a girl with her.
Yes.
And then she's like living to like reconnect with her slave master boyfriend. You know what I mean?
Is
like,
that what it's about?
Yes, it was really bad.
And I was like,
Jenny.
Who's the creator?
I can't remember the name
Yeah.
off the top of my head.
But
Are
no,
they
wait, I think
Latino?
the biggest issue was how it was advertised versus what it actually was.
Because everyone was hyping it,
Yes.
and then it stopped being hyped. And I think it's
because
of
of what it actually was.
Oh my God.
Like, you're talking about, like, they advertised it as, like, she's an Afro-Latina, and she's a bruja, and she's supposed to be, like, this badass witch that, like, time travels.
That's what I thought it was going to be.
And it turns out that she's time traveling to be with her slave master.
Who thought that was a good
boyfriend.
idea?
Yeah.
Like,
Who thought that was a good idea?
And there are moments, like there are like little moments where it's like cool, like when you see her being a bruja and like having her tricks in the same way that like watching Harry Potter can excite you when you're seeing like magic.
Yeah.
But just that underlying storyline, and then there's like one other Afro-Latino like kind of like secondary character there, but they're in Colombia is where it takes place. But even just the representation of Colombia itself, I was just like, but where is like the richness in their culture too? Like let alone having Afro-Latinx woman play this lead. It was just, I don't know. And it was also, I think, aimed towards a younger audience, and I didn't expect that. I thought it was going to be aimed a little bit more towards us. also moments where they can get really real and raunchy, and not even just sexually raunchy, but just like really getting into stuff they don't. And so it took away. It's like, so she's after the slave master boyfriend, and she can't really like dig into her skills too hard because it's past PG-13. Okay, so now I'm just bored and disappointed. Man. Yeah. So it was.
I was looking forward to tuning into this.
Yeah, and I think in the same way, like, you know, that people have their mixed feelings about One Day at a Time.
Yeah, for sure.
You know what I mean? I think that there is something to be said about having something on the map, and nothing at all, but then being conscious of like, well, what are we going to put as acceptable as these first sort of like brick buildings? Because like, not everything is perfect, right? Like sitcoms from back in the day that were great are not necessarily better than some of the sitcoms now, but there's something that they started with. There was a style, there was something that they gave that helped build the foundation. And it really leads to our next topic, which is like, what kind of Latinx are you, right? And the struggles of audience building for a market that doesn't necessarily highlight nuances. So when we're looking at Latinx content, I know growing up, like, everything that was going through Televisa, anything that I saw on Univision, Telemundo, you know, Mundo, when that came out, like all of that stuff, it was very Central America centric. I never really saw Caribbean representation in these things. And then anytime I saw something that was slightly Afro, it was like these novelas that were super sex oriented that were coming from Brazil, that they were like played dubbed. You know what I mean? And so like even then I was like, oh, okay, so I get that like Brazilians are black in that way, but like they never put black Dominicanos, Cubanos, Boricuas, like it was just sort of not reflective whatsoever of the people who, when I walked outside my Latinx ass neighborhood, like those were not the people I was seeing. No. Even down to like in the telenovelas, like Lo Mexicano that I grew up with did not look like these fucking Mexicanos.
They were paler than me.
Yeah. They, like, when we went to the Telemundo Awards for Shit Spanish Girls Say, it was kind of weird. Do you want to talk a little bit about?
Yeah, I think it was just like a matter of like really being surrounded by like Barbie dolls.
Yeah.
Like,
oh my gosh.
You're talking about these soap opera actors, these novella actors were like tall, blonde, busty where they needed to be, like, yeah. You know, and we're not trying to share a limo at all. Remember that?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the award show, they were sending all the limos back to the hotel, and they put us in with this one lady, and this lady was sucking her teeth the entire time. She was tight that she had to share her limo back to the hotel with us.
Yeah.
What?
But yeah, it was really just on some like, and like for us, we had like a crazy experience where like we didn't have our credentials, so then they like, you know.
Yeah, they basically.
Yeah, it was crazy.
They had it. They had our name on stuff, but they had nobody who knew who we were or knew who we looked like. So when we got off of the limo on the red carpet, they were like, "You're not supposed to get off here." And we're like, "What do you mean? This car you guys sent for us said that we had to get off here." And they're like, "Who are you with?" And we're like, "We're Shit Spanish Girls Say we're nominated for such and such category." And they were like, No, this is not your entrance. This is not your entrance. And I'm like, "You sure? Like, this is where they said we had to go off to go to the back." And they're like, "No, you don't belong." But this sounds so typical of these events. And then they sent us. We had to walk like an avenue and a half all the way behind the venue. And we were in general admission. The lady's like, "What are you guys doing here? You don't belong here. These tickets are for the red carpet." And I was like, they kicked us off the red carpet, like literally, but the cameras were ready because they were catching people as the door opened.
So like literally, like we got out of the door and like people were taking pictures of us.
And some dude was like, "Who are you? Get off!"
Get off.
No.
Yeah.
Yes.
Did they do that to the other nominated influencers?
No.
And then
there
it was
even
like
a dude with a dog that got better treated than us. Yeah.
Did you feel like you were the only people of color?
Yes.
Yeah.
Shit.
Switch then.
And people say that colorism doesn't exist within the community.
And it was so interesting to see how that moment played itself out. We didn't get to eat food. Like they were just like we didn't get anything. It was really, really scrappy. It was terrible. But it really sort of struck the fear of God in us in a way where it was like, oh God, like these are people that we want to create content for. Do they even want us? Like, are we even welcome here? Like, it's
very different. It's night and day.
Yeah.
But that's why our generation, like content creators that I don't even know how to categorize us, but it's like when I was at Me Too, I think they like clarified it the best way is like we're making content for millennials who are Hispanic or Latino living in the U.S. So it's like it's a new genre. It's not the Univision and Telemundo genre of content. It's a different audience. It's a younger audience. It's just different. It just is.
And this is, mind you, this is directly after Shit Spanish Girls went viral. So this was 7 years ago. Yeah. Where, you know, YouTube, being a YouTube or content creator wasn't necessarily a thing.
No.
There were viral videos and there were people who were becoming famous on YouTube. But it wasn't like this thing where now you have like YouTube Next Up and you have like all these programs of like ins and outs of how to be successful on YouTube or how to become a BuzzFeed personality or, you know, like all this stuff where people are literally like training you to become this. Like, so we had no type of representation at that time. Right. And we had no kind of game at that time either. So like it was kind of like a giant wake-up call for us as creators to be like, okay, well then next time, you know, and then the next time that's not going to happen, and how you kind of like just like carry yourself and have to kind of represent for yourself because we're not coming from having agents and managers and
that was so new for you guys at the time. Yeah. Like, shit.
We were like chivitos. We were like, how old? 21?
I remember seeing the video. That was all. I forgot if it was still MySpace age or what.
It was.
What year was it?
Facebook age.
It was Facebook age.
It was Facebook age. But everyone was sharing your video on my wall, the Shit Miami Girls Say video, and then Shit Abuelas Say.
Yes.
Those are the three main ones that were going viral in Miami, and I was like, oh man, that's so dope. So I'm really upset that this happened to you, but I'm also not surprised. It's something that I remember. You know, I grew up watching Univision mostly, not so much Telemundo. Same. And for me, what stood out, aside from the novelas all being the same crap, like a bunch of white people, and then like the people of color were the maids. Yeah. Oh, it's so creative. It was the sexism, también, that really bugged me. It was like always creepy old men, like the playing the doctor, and it was like then like the hypersexualized women with their tetas hanging out.
Yeah, being all helpless.
And it wasn't even, but it wasn't even funny. Yeah. It wasn't even funny. Like, it was cringeworthy. Yeah. So there's a lot of problems.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's really, it derives from our culture, and I do think that in the same way that our generation, hopefully it's a generation that's like, okay, fuck that stuff. Like, we know it exists. It's part of, like, what built a lot of the values and the way people have opinions nowadays, but it doesn't mean that we need to keep it up. We can include it in ways that are honest, you know, and like in our culture without like celebrating it, but saying like, this is really what it is. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. Because there's a lot of that. There's a lot of moments like when I was writing for the Cat Call season 3, you know, and I wrote the What's Wrong with Being a Golda episode, right?
Oh, that was such a good. I didn't know you wrote that.
Yes, I did.
Yeah. That was dope. That was dope.
And the ones that are not all Catholics are not all Latinos are Catholics. Those were the ones that I wrote. Great. And it was so fun working on those, but it was so interesting even in like trying to write the dialogue between the mother and the daughter with the eating and all that stuff, because the things that I naturally wanted to say were so mean and toxic.
That's what's tough. Like I experience the same issues with content creation. Yeah. And I even lost a friend over this recently, actually, where I was crowdsourcing with my personal friends on Facebook, where it was a video about abuela giving love advice. And let's just be real, my abuela had some sexist ideals. You know, they even the simple comments like put on makeup or your husband's gonna leave you kind of thing. I would be told that all the time. Like, why don't you put more makeup on? He's gonna cheat on you if you don't look good. That right there is a sexist comment, right? Yeah. And I prefaced the crowdsourcing by saying, hey, I'm doing this video about abuela giving love advice. It was for Valentine's Day. But I also want to make sure, because again, she can say some pretty mean and crazy things. And I don't want my audience to get confused with me as a creator agreeing with these sexist ideals. Right. And then this guy went on he just went off on me saying, how about we stop being so freaking woke and stop making our sweet, dear, loving abuelas look like these sexist monsters. Like, how dare you? Like, and he even got poetic, and I was just like, wow. He started sharing photos of him and his grandma. He's like, wow. I proudly stand on my grandmother's shoulders, and really weird stuff. I was like, bless your heart that you love your grandma this much. I'm like, how dare you? My grandma character is based on my real grandma who passed away 3 years ago, who I loved dearly, but I still called her out on her racist comments. I called her out on her like sexist comments, and that's like we all have. Nobody's perfect, you know. Even I've learned a lot. Like, I've said things in the past that then I realized was offensive to like Native Americans, and I didn't like indigenous culture. We're learning all the time. Yeah. I think it's like good to be loving and empathetic, not snap and try to break someone's head off because we don't know everything. Yeah. You know, I've learned a lot even in the 4 years of living out here. You know what I mean? We're constantly growing and learning and meeting new people and seeing what is wrong and what is right. And that's why because what happened with one of my abuela sketches once was that abuela kind of wasn't the person you're supposed to root for. And some audience members got confused and thought I, as the creator, was for this. Yeah. And I had to explain, no, I know you love the abuela character, but she's not always right. She's kind of very old school traditional, and she has a lot of wrong ideas about things.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and it's honestly like, and there are ways in which I think the people from that generation who want to be progressive, instead of actually doing the work to change their patterns or like respect new ideas that are coming in, they just stay quiet. They just stay quiet, and then they'll wait until the right people come around, and then they'll say whatever they have to say about their opinions about the stuff. So it's really interesting. And then creating content like that too is like, as much as we are millennial focused, like, we're out there, so anyone can really see us, you know? Yeah. And really sort of take on our ideas as their own with ours. And this is like a smaller example, but like with Shit Spanish Girls Say, we chose to use the word Spanish because in the East Coast, there is like using the word Latino was not as common because growing up in the hood, you know, it was the Latinos, it was the black people, and then, you know, we had our like Caribbean, like Guyanese folk here and there, and people from like Jamaica and all that, but
it was the Spanish and the black people.
It was Spanish. It was viewed as very much the Spanish and black and nothing else. Not like, oh, this is a Mexican, this is a Puerto Rican. This is this. Oh, y'all mother don't speak English, no habla inglés, you Spanish. That's it. Like, that was it. You know what I mean? And this idea of Afro-Latino wasn't a thing. Is like, no, girl, like, your hair is not as hard as mine, so get over there with that, you black shit. You ain't black, bitch. Go over there.
No, seriously.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, and it was very separatist in that way, but we knew that. But I, like, because in college I studied Latino studies and Afro-Latino studies. So I learned by the time we made Spanish Girls Say, I already knew I was a black woman, like a black Latina woman. And I already understood that the word Spanish was not a race. It is the language of, like, you know, if you want to call it the oppressor or whatever word you want to use, that sort of colonized everybody. And that's why we speak Spanish. But we used it because it was true to the culture of what Cesa is and where Cesa would have grown up.
And it was a full conversation. It wasn't just like... It wasn't anything that we
took lightly.
It was definitely like a full conversation that
like
we had.
We knew,
and
the comments immediately. That's not how women in Spain behave. There's no women
I knew it.
I
knew you were
to this day. I can
Spain.
I can open up my YouTube account now, and I promise you, I probably have a comment.
Yeah,
talking about how Spanish isn't like.
Yeah.
But wouldn't it be Shit Spaniard Girls Say? Right? Wouldn't that be more specific?
Right, and also like just like then it went into things like people. I remember someone called me a dirty black Dominican slave. Okay, and I was like, interesting. Never heard that one before. And it was the person who commented was also Latino. It wasn't from like a white dude, you know. And it's so interesting. But these are our audiences, and so going back to the sort of like the struggle of building that market, there's that struggle because we're trying to find the universality, and on top of that, move past the stereotypes or negative sort of perspectives that existed before us. But then, you know, even more so than that is like, as much as like, how do I continue to big up the Latinx community as a whole when my experience is so Dominican?
Yeah, that's what my fear is with being a freaking Cuban from Miami. And then what's added on me is that I'm light-skinned, right? Yeah. So then it's like, shit. I've had some people come after me in a not so nice way, and they're like, "You're taking up too much space as a white Latina," and I'm like, "Shit." Wow. I never view myself as white.
Right.
It's weird because in Miami, everyone's just Latino-ish, Hispanic, because we go use Hispanic more than we do Latino. It wasn't until I moved out here, and in media, Latino just is more all-encompassing.
Yeah, yep.
And it's hard to make everybody happy. It's complicated. So I'm like, I always said we're just a bunch of Hispanic people. That's it. We're just a bunch of Hispanic people and Caribbean people, because we got a lot of Haitians and Jamaicans, Bahamians, and so for me it was just like one big melting pot of Caribbean.
Yeah. Yep.
For the most part, and then a lot of también like South Americans.
Yeah.
Peruvians, Colombians. I have like a bunch of friends who are Nicaraguan, Honduran.
Right.
So whereas in LA you get mostly just Mexican and Salvadorian.
Yeah.
And then a little sprinkle here and there of all the different countries. But Miami was more like, so I never viewed myself as white, even though genetically I am. I come from the freaking colonizer land. So that's also awkward, because I'm like, ooh, crap. My DNA is 45% Iberian.
Wow.
Yikes. So then, but then it's like Miami's such a bubble, and this is this big cultural, like, land coming out here and then putting myself out there on the internet. For the most part, people have been very accepting. They're like, yes, she's a white Cuban, but I relate to her.
Right.
I relate to her experience. It was very hurtful to deal with the very negative comments, because I can't, at the end of the day, none of us can do anything about our skin color.
Right.
But with me, and again, there's Latinos that hate the word privilege, and I don't know why. It's a fact.
Right.
I have more privilege than a person of color. End of story. Maybe if I go to Alabama and I open my mouth, whoops. They're like, she's no longer. Right. But even still, I'll get away with a lot more. Yeah. Or be treated better. And that's not necessarily, I don't know why some Latinos get so upset. Right. When they're like, that's not, stop talking about privilege. I'm like, well, I don't know why it makes you uncomfortable. It's just, it is what it is. And all you have to do is be aware of it. Right. And then help your brothers and sisters out that are not like white passing or have that privilege. So I don't know. I don't think it's that hard of a concept.
It's not
to grasp, but
and people make it that, and then they also when there's one of, so it's like, okay, you want to, I'll use Afro-Latino as an example. Like, you want an Afro-Latino, fine. Here's your one Afro-Latino girl and your one Afro-Latino boy. Go on and be happy. Like, right? And then it's like, those positions are filled. And then it's like, okay, but there's like a slew of Afro-Latinx creators who are all like, trying
just let
to,
them
like,
do, like,
let them
I hate these little like little boxes.
Yeah, and it does feel that way. Like, there's a lot of, like, whether it's like different media groups or like even on like television and like having TV shows, it's like, we had enough of these types of characters, we're good. Done. Like, but they're not necessarily willing to put them on the forefront, or if they're in the forefront, like, it's a really big deal and we need to draw a lot of attention to the fact that this story is being told from a black person's perspective, because God forbid if we don't. Like, I keep saying I want to live in the day and age where I can write a regular ass movie. What's a basic movie? Like The Notebook, right? And it doesn't have to be super spicy or extra sexy because it's Latino love. And
oh my gosh, I know.
Just a million other things. I'd love to make a Dominican Juno, right? Not because I'm like, ooh, I wish Dominicans had that experience, but because Dominicans do have that experience. Yeah. And we just don't have the chance to see it in action. And so in that same frame, it's like, I think the more that we allow the individualism of the voice to evolve, the more that we create space for more creative ideas, and then eventually there's this homogeny that'll exist of like, this is, yes, the Latino sector of or the Latinx sector of creative, endeavors, movies, online content, blah blah blah, but there's nuances in there, they exist, we accept them, and it's not a conversation, it doesn't need to be a thing.
It just is.
I'm tired of that.
I'm tired of it.
I'm tired of talking about being Afro-Latina. Like, I don't want to talk about that shit anymore. Like, I want to talk about other things. And in
a place of just like being women as well.
Yes.
That it's like, I personally hate the term like boss girl or girl
boss bitch.
And I'm like, why can't it just be boss? Like, I get where you're trying to go here, and it's coming from a good place. Right. Target t-shirts, but I'm like, I almost feel like it takes away from you. Yeah. Like, what the heck does my gender have to do with
Right.
being a boss?
With my power.
No one puts guy boss.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And so there's just, even within that, there's a lot of problems still. I was, I mean, obviously I'm not going to throw spoilers out there, but I just saw Endgame, and there were moments where
careful.
I felt so empowered and emotional because there's so many female superheroes out there now. And when I was growing up, I had a tough time. I mean, in general, as we talked earlier about my whole nerd time, but little boys, like, I wanted to play with the boys sometimes, and I wanted to be like a Power Ranger. And even though there were 2 female Power Rangers, that wasn't enough. There wasn't enough female superheroes. So I remember growing up in a world where boys in my classes viewed women as weaker than them. They're like, you're a sissy pants. You're like this little frail thing. Like, no way are you going to be playing superheroes with us, or like mutants or ninjas or whatever it was that was too much for a girl to do. I'm not in an elementary school now, but what I'm hoping is that because of movies like the Star Wars franchise, Marvel, DC, all these shows that are also lifting up women, as well as women of color in these, universes, that young boys will maybe be more respectful towards women and not see us as these like weak little damsel in distresses. That's what I'm hoping is going down in the schools right now.
Yeah, and I think so. I think that even Black Panther did a great job of like, yes, the movie's about Black Panther, but
but the women,
women,
the women did a lot of the.
It was so
there.
obvious they ran the show that nobody could say otherwise. You know
Exactly.
what I mean? And I loved and appreciated that. And like in the same way that like, which is another great example of Marvel, Disney making another bold move and doing that. Even the success of like Get Out and Us too. Like, you know what I mean? Or
Jordan
Crazy
Peele,
Rich Asians even. Amazing, right? So like the idea, but one thing that I think that we as like on our level can learn from them is that sometimes, and granted some of them have more star power than we do at this moment,
I
but
know.
like we can actually go rogue and do it our way because our audience is there, and we don't need to prove it to them that our audience is there. We know they're there because we were our audience. We are our audience.
Yes.
We are still hungry and starving, which is why we're creating it, which is why we appreciate each other's art, right? Because in the ways where I don't have an abuela character, but like I want to see an abuela that is very similar to mine, or just like mine on TV, so that's what you're creating. People want to see that Bronx girl with the sass, whatever. And so that is what Skittles is creating. So it's all there. And I think the most important piece that we cannot let go of is that we can do it without the major industries. And it feels impossible, and it's like a harder, longer road. But because we have whatever level of visibility we have to carry our audience. They will go with us because they want this stuff created. So we have to support each other, because if that means that we're going to go rogue and independent, then the extra hands or the, intro me to this person, like all of these connections that we make, it is that community. But it is going back to our roots of, growing up, our families growing up in the countries and like being in the neighborhood. Y fulanita could spank your kids if she wanted to. And this person can like do that. And that woman was like my aunt, even though she's not really. But this idea that community, the way it exists in our culture, actually can carry the industry the way we want it to be carried for ourselves. So I'm interested to see the future of how we all continue to collaborate in this world and create the content, because as we see, the audiences are there.
Yeah, they're there. And I think that's why what we're doing is so important, because it took me a while to realize that. I'm like, what I'm doing isn't important. Internet's not the same thing as TV and film. Yeah. But I'm like, nope, I was wrong, because I feel like a lot of networks are looking, because I've been in meetings. I've been called in by Disney and True TV and other major networks to like pick my brain and like, what do you have? What, and it's a process. It's kind of like a tease to go to these major studios, because like you're like, oh my gosh, please, someone. And it's a process that can take years. But at the very least, I've had these networks reach out to me because they want what I'm doing for their platform, for television, because they see how the audience is reacting. Right. So, and for anybody out there who's considering, being a writer or doing YouTube or starting a podcast or even their own like business, I am just do it, please, because it's almost like we need to build our own army against the Thanos.
Right.
We all have to come together with our individual superpowers And again, the more diverse, the better as well. That's why I love that you guys are like también Caribbean, Latinos, and like because I'm also in a weird place where every time I go out for an audition and they want you to be Latino, they want you to be Mexican, and I'm like, first of all, I feel then they're telling you have to start learning how to do a Mexican accent.
Wow.
And I'm just like, why don't you just give it to a Mexican, first of all? Second of all, why does it have to just be Mexican?
Right.
And again, nothing against the Mexican people, but and it's just like, again, there's so many of us. Yeah. Why can't, like for instance, like a good example that always baffled me was Oscar in The Office. He's Cuban.
Yeah.
They made him Mexican. I'm like, you couldn't come up with Cuban jokes?
Right.
Love that show.
Yeah.
But it's things like that.
And I think that has a lot to do with, especially when we're talking about shows and people and writers who are based in LA, because LA has so much of that culture, and a lot of times there are just white people on these writing teams. When they think of their frame of reference for anything Latino,
they
Mexican
go straight to Mexican.
Mexican is it.
They don't know what else to do.
And if you don't live in the East Coast, it's even hard to say Boricua or Cubano sometimes. Or if you're not from Miami, it's hard to bring up.
But they don't know anything. Well, have you seen Guava Island?
I haven't.
So it's been such a crazy month for me, but my friend showed me the video, and it takes place in Cuba. But all the actors did not sound Cuban at all. And I'm like, you couldn't find black Cuban actors?
There's
and Rihanna was, I think, I could be wrong, Rihanna was playing a Cubana, and while she's...
that's the Childish Gambino.
Childish Gambino.
Oh, I have.
And I love him. And I was just like, but you guys couldn't find Cuban people to do that? Because you can tell in the accent. They sounded, I'm not sure, they sounded more like Bahamian, Jamaican. Right. And they're trying to pass off. And it's these little details. I'm like, you guys could have had it almost there. Yeah. If you chose Cuban
Right. If you let people play themselves.
And I mean, I know a woman who just shot a short film in Cuba, and she used black Cuban actors. They're there.
Yeah.
I'm like, why? Exist. And it's like, we can tell the difference.
Yes. Yep. And there's a lot in New York, because for a very long time, up until recently, when I do my playwriting, I always had either black Cubanos playing Dominicans or, like African Americans, and then I would compromise the Spanish so that I can have what would represent an Afro-Latino on stage. But they exist. And then finally, I'm finding all these Dominican actors, and like we're in these random little pockets, separate communities trying to build something sustainable, but we don't find each other. But when we do find each other, the more that we conglomerate, like that's the level of power that I'm talking about, where if somebody says to the right, just casting person, like, we need black Cubanos, that the network is there. It's like, hell yeah, call this person in New York. They got everybody you need, from abuela down to the baby. Like, boom, 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 boom. You know what I mean? Like, and it really is that way. But like I said, I think the work we are doing is very important. I think what you said was right, and I'm really excited to see what continues to come of the work that we're doing here.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
Likewise.
All right, so we want to close it out with a little bit of loose from you in our Dame Loose section. I said it like a white person. Dame Loose. Dame Loose. Dame Lou. So I want to know, as a Latina woman, like, the idea of womanhood is very tied to the idea of your relationships and who you're going to end up with. And the women in my family are very curious to see what kind of person I'm going to end up with. So I'm curious, we all know and love Abuela, and as we know, Abuela has given love advice before. I'm very curious, what are qualities that Abuela expects in the partners for the people that she loves in her life, but versus what Jenny lives and believes and follows?
Oh boy. Since my Abuela character is based on my real Abuela, she wanted me to, she would want you to marry the same race, and and even if you can be Cuban and be, so very just purist, Cuban with a Cuban, Dominican with a Dominican, very like that, very Noah's Ark. I'll see, but it's not all bad, just doesn't believe in divorce, so wants you to make sure that the person you marry is a person that you're going to spend the rest of your life with. Yeah. That your partner is good at handiwork, and knows how to fix a toilet and build things and is a good provider.
Yeah.
The whole being taken care of provider. And of course, this is very normative.
Yeah.
Just, I don't think Abuela's mind is there.
Yeah.
or nor does she know much about that world. She's the type of woman who had maybe that one friend that she wasn't sure about. And that never got married. And, she assumes I might have been a little.
Yeah.
And that's it. So, it's more very heteronormative, very just lo blanquito with the blanquitos. And, así, like, just very... and the person has lighter eyes, the better, because that way then your kid comes out with the blue eyes.
Yeah.
And I feel so bad, because I'm not trying to make my abuela character or my abuela, may she rest in peace, look bad. But when it came to love advice, it definitely was very antiquated.
Yeah.
And, of course, there's well-meaning in the sense of, like, the protector and the provider. But it's still rooted in these sexist, like, the woman stays home and takes care. Now, I will say about my abuela, though, she was very okay with me wanting to be an artist and an actor. So, she was very open-minded when it came to those things. Again, there were things that she was very stubborn and, like, old school about.
Right.
But there were things that she was definitely a lot more open-minded to compared to other abuelas.
Yeah.
And ultimately, my abuela character, even though she's mainly... my abuela, but she's a combination of other people's abuelas and just older Latina women. Because my abuela didn't throw shade like that,
right?
Or wasn't like a celosa like that. But I added that element for fun because that is what other abuelitas are like. Yes. So yeah, but when it came to love and stuff, I mean, my abuela personally, she only knew my abuelo. Like she got married. Well, she was 15 and he was 20, and they started dating. That was the only man she's ever been with, and they died 5 days apart.
Wow.
After like 65 odd years.
Wow.
So, she doesn't know much. She didn't know much about the dating world, and, that's all she knew in Cuba, and that's who she met. And thank God they had an amazing love.
Wow.
But it's tough when you've only been with one person to give love advice.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah, no, that's really true. But there is some sort of like weird nostalgic beauty I find with these like older relationships where it starts from young and they really grow and build with each other. Like in several cases, like obviously it doesn't work out, but in many cases, like my parents, for example, my parents have been together for 39 years now. So like that's really cool. They met each other when they were like I think 16 years old.
So like it's very similar.
Yeah, it's a very similar love story. Like slightly more progressive in the sense of like my dad's not cooking dinner. My mom is still cooking dinner, but like on Sundays my dad will make the mango because he likes making it, right? But like he's not afraid to be in the kitchen.
Exactly.
Well, she's in the kitchen because that's what she does. And like my mother, I mean, like that's a whole other saga story for another time. But like she grew up, she was an orphan by the time she was 13. So a lot of what she had to do for herself was become that woman for her and her younger siblings.
That was my abuela. It was like, I don't know. It was like a large number of siblings. I don't even know. My abuela was one of like 10 girls.
Wow.
He was the only boy. Wow. And his father died when he was very young.
Wow.
So he was almost like he had to be the man of the family. Wow. So he knew how to like paint and build and do the. And my abuela was like the master chef and the one who cleaned. And I guess it's interesting you bring up the sibling situation. You're basically raising your siblings. Yeah. And so I understand it was a different time. I, for one, do not like cooking. Yeah. So my fiance does a lot more of the cooking. Yeah. So I know you asked like what I believe. Yeah. I'm just very like, I'm very progressive when it comes to that. Love who you want to love. Yeah. Like seriously, no judgments, and I just don't believe in these stupid like gender biased roles in the house. Like, I don't believe in there being a head of the house. Some people are gonna fight me over this. Yeah. Because a lot of people go, oh, but the Bible says, and I'm like, okay. Oh. Mm-hmm. I think it's a shared responsibility in the household, and my dad's mom, she was the handy woman. She was always painting and building, and she was all into that, and I got a lot of that from her. And my dad's dad was a businessman, so he was like an accountant, and he just liked to work in his office. And I see he never dirtied himself once. He was always in a business suit. So I believe in a world of gray area, and there's people that believe in very black and white. This is how it is. Yeah.
Right.
I'm like, no, everybody's so different. Like,
Yeah.
you can't judge. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
you have to have lived that person's life to fully understand why they. And I'm just very open-minded about those things.
Yeah.
I'm very anti little girls, and I was that little girl who just played with the kitchen stuff. And I'm like, why the heck are the boys not? Are men not supposed to learn how to cook a
Right.
damn meal?
Right. Right.
So are men just
Right.
sitting around picking their noses and with like a plunger in their hand, like, I
Right.
know how to fix a toilet,
Yeah.
but I don't know how to cook. It's a survival skill. I
Yeah.
just see it as just learn what you can.
Yeah.
Learn how to fix a car, learn how to paint, learn how to build IKEA furniture. It doesn't matter what the hell is your freaking I think it's just so ridiculous.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, we know that.
Like, again, I hate the whole, like, even on TV, like, oh, they're a mix. I want to be at a point where I don't have to notice that Disney's bringing in mixed race couples.
Right.
Or, like, I've been noticing it now in commercials, too. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
it's a mixed race couple. Oh, that's a gay couple.
Yeah.
I want it to be like it's so normal that no one cares.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that's what life is. You step outside, you see a gay couple holding hands walking down the street, you see an interracial couple.
right.
But why is it weird when we see it on TV?
Yeah.
Because we've been so used to the same mierda over and over and over again.
And also, like, from people, like, I know with me sometimes when I see it a lot, I'm like, y'all just doing this for show, or y'all really ready to do this? Like, are y'all
I know. Sometimes, like, you don't know how sincere. I'm like, do you guys really care? But I believe so. I mean,
do too. Yeah.
when I've met with these networks, it usually is people of color and, like,
Yeah.
Latinos and stuff that are at the ground floor trying to, like,
Right.
pick the brains of people like us and being like, look, we as a company are really trying to learn
Yeah.
here. So I think it's happening.
Yeah.
It's happening, and I really hope that things start changing for the better with Latinos, because we're still stuck in stereotype land, and we're still stuck in this, like, we have a show and then it gets canceled right away. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's
Yeah.
like, oh shit, we gotta do this.
And I think we will. I really do feel optimistic about it. I think there's a different energy behind it. I think the climate, even the political climate, lends itself to people being a little
Yes.
more like, where I might have been a bit lazier about engaging a thing or supporting a thing. Like, people are like saying about movies, like, oh, we need to see it opening weekend so it gets the buzz that it needs, and like really being more thoughtful about the way that they're engaging the content of the people who represent them, because they want so badly for these things to stay.
Successful.
Yeah, and be successful, because now that there's more insight, and the internet is wonderful in this way, now audience members have an inside look on how things work in a way that they didn't used to.
Yeah.
So now they can participate in those ways. And so if it means trending a hashtag to change some shit that a company says, or an announcement, like, you know, they're willing to fight on the ground for us and all those values. And yeah, it's really fun. Well, thank you so much for being on here with us today. This
Thank you
is
for
really
having me. I love it. I
awesome.
can go on and on forever about these topics.
So any upcoming projects or people you want to shout out, and where can we find you on social media?
So, I have a website, jennylorenzo.com. It's like a one-stop shop, but I'm also on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. All my handles are all over the place. But if you just look up Jenny Lorenzo, you'll
Right.
find me on those platforms. I release all my content on those platforms. And I just want to, like, overall just give a shout out to, like, everybody that's busting their asses trying to make the content, whether it's on their cell phone or like a little mic that they have, or if they have a giant team behind them. I just want all of us to support each other more, because if us digital creators come together more often, we can really change Hollywood. And that's not something I really thought about at first. I'm like, well, this is not Hollywood, but it kind of is.
Yeah.
And more people are paying attention than you realize.
Yep.
So
100%.
yeah.
Yes. Nah. All right, guys, and you can find us at Ladies Who Bronche on Instagram, Facebook, all the podcast stuffs. And thanks for tuning in. Until next time, Bronche.